I knew Spider-Man 2 was gonna be good, but hot damn. I'm warning you now, the glaze for this game is gonna be laid on kind of thick, but honestly, it deserves it. This game is personally one of my favorites of the year. There are so many aspects they've improved upon from the OG game and Miles Morales that makes fans as hype as they are. But we've also seen the other side. The haters, the nitpickers, and the people who don't have anything better to do than fuel console wars. But don't worry, it's my job to provide you with the facts. With all the back and forth online, we just have to see, is Marvel Spider-Man 2 worth the hype? Hello world and all who inhabit it, it is I, the Great Sayran, and there's a bunch to love about Marvel Spider-Man 2. I played Spider-Man Remastered, all the DLC, and Miles Morales, but I've never reviewed them on this channel. Spoiler alert, I freaking love them. I'm a big Spider-Man fan in general and will pretty much throw my wallet at anything Spidey. From the old PS1 game where you couldn't touch the ground to Web of Shadows where you had the cameos of different Marvel characters to the original Spider-Man 2 with that catchy pizza theme song. I've played them and I've enjoyed them, but this is peak. I'm gonna eventually put my Spidey bias to the side and give my objective take, which may shock some of you, but until then, enjoy the glaze. Yes, I know I sound like a fanboy, but check my tweets. I constantly criticize Sony, but when you pop out games like this as often as they do, it kind of makes me shut up and realize what I'm getting in comparison to the rest of the industry. More on that later. There's so much to go over with this game, and I really don't want to miss anything, but if I do, I'll probably go over it in a YouTube short or something. So be sure to like, comment, and subscribe so you don't miss out on any additional thoughts I may have on this game even after this review. I can't even begin to do this game justice.
I have to protect them. They need me, man. Nothing will happen to your family. Nothing. You got this.
First off, we have to talk about the combat. I've always loved the combat system in the Spider-Man games, but this time it feels a bit more polished and complete. There's no lock-on in the normal sense, but instead that familiar omnidirectional magnetic targeting that just works great in a game where you're usually surrounded by a lot of enemies all at once. There can be a few hiccups, like when I'm trying to use an ability that only hits one enemy and targets the wrong person, but for the most part, everything works as it should. You're putting a lot of faith in that right thumbstick, but it just feels right. You have the fast-paced ground combat, the flashy aerial stuff, finishers, and abilities. These all work together seamlessly to give you a great combat experience. I was fighting a boss 8 times my size and my instincts just took over. I knew when to attack, dodge, web up my enemy, and of course, use a finisher. Which, by the way, all look absolutely incredible. Of course, my absolute favorite is when Miles does a Kamehameha wave with his new abilities, but since there's a lot of tag team fighting in the game, it's also cool to see the synergy that each Spider-Man not only has with each other, but with other partners they can fight with. I have to hand it to the combat team. I played Miles Morales first and then played Spider-Man Remastered, and it felt like such a downgrade. Miles can use electricity, and after playing with those abilities for a whole game, going back to Peter just felt underwhelming. Incredibly fun, but underwhelming. I went into Spider-Man 2 expecting the story to lean heavily on Peter, but the combat relying on Miles. They actually addressed this easily even without the symbiote Spider-Man suit. The robotic legs we've seen Peter use in the past are actually comparatively as fun as Miles' bioelectricity. The skill tree is much larger than usual since there are 2 individual Spider-Man to level up. There's still so much fun in prioritizing which abilities you want your characters to use. You can equip up to 4, and my biggest gripe is that I can't put these anywhere I want to on the wheel. For instance, I can only use L1 and square for Miles' Venom Punch or his Chain Lightning. I appreciate the new abilities, but I would have loved to have put whatever ability I want wherever. The gadgets are back, and again, they are severely underrated. You can go the whole game without using them in combat, but honestly, that doesn't feel like a smart idea. They can seriously lend a hand when all your abilities are on cooldown and you don't have any focus to heal, which happened to me often because I'd rather do finishers than heal. I mean, one does look infinitely cooler than the other. Enemies feel a little bit tougher in this game, and I really can't wait to go back and play in the hardest difficult to experience pure pain. Combat is extremely fluid, and honestly, you can feel a bit overwhelmed as Spider-Man, especially with the DualSense controller mimicking every step you take, web you flip, and punch to the back of the head you get. I want to talk about it later on in the video, but the DualSense takes this experience to a whole nother level.
Seemed like you guys were doing good. She was at your house? We'll figure it out. You always do. Eventually.
Speaking of levels, this story has several, and that's what I've always loved about the Spider-Man games. It's not just a singular goal with several obstacles in place that makes this simple task a journey. Even if it was that, it'd be fine, but what makes this game's story so great is that it's centered around themes and events that happen to challenge those themes. I'm more invested in Miles and Peter's civilian story than I am their Spider-Man story. It's that balance of being Spider-Man and being a normal person in society. Love interests, jobs, pressures placed on ourselves to succeed, it's all there in classic Spider-Man Spider-Man fashion. I'm never opposed to story-driven games, but I'm also not the most story-focused person. I love how this story is told and how it's paced between both Miles and Peter's. They each have their own lives and issues that they're separately dealing with. Peter is still trying to guide Miles as a young man and as Spider-Man while navigating his own young adulthood and serious relationship. Miles is still dealing with the death of his father, finding himself and becoming who everyone needs him to be as a hero and as a regular human. Swapping between both, you get to experience both sides of a story that captures you better than most stories in 2023 have. It makes you care because it's an aspect of the game that's just as polished and entertaining as the combat we mentioned and the web slinging we'll talk about later. I don't want to spoil the story at all. However, some of the deepest stories are actually in the side quests. Yeah, I know, say you're doing side quests, rare, right? There was this one scene where the grandpa tells us the story of how he proposed to his late wife, and it was so captivating, and that's just one example of a multitude of stories this city has given us. You may not be able to walk into restaurants and have a seat, but you can interact deeply with the people of this fictional New York, and I think I like that better. In addition to the main story and side quests, there's this higher tier of serialized side content that I've always loved about this franchise. These have near main story levels of storytelling, incredibly engaging fights, and rewards that make you feel like it was all worth it aside from the completion trophy. I don't have many issues with the storytelling here. It got my attention, kept my attention, and had me wanting whatever they did here in all my games. You don't need to play the other games to understand this story, but I recommend it since these are all phenomenal experiences. I think the rest of the industry could learn a thing or two about how to be good at telling a story in today's landscape, but then again, that's Sony's specialty.
Here's another one. I can catch that updraft.
This world is conflicting. On one hand, being able to web sling, glide, and fly all across New York is actually amazing, but on the other hand, we can't go in these buildings and are limited to interacting on what's essentially shiny giant rocks and the ground. There isn't much to this world from a perspective of what other open world games are doing today. I'm not nitpicking, it's just an objective take. Getting around the world is the main attraction here. It's not about going into every bodega and being able to see each NPC in their everyday life, so I'm not mad at it. There is a lot of side content here, from the deep and rich side missions to the collectathons, which are back. The DualSense gives you more interactivity, especially on things like the Miles Prowler collectibles. I actually had no idea I love it in this game this much. Honestly, most games, and even first-party ones, have treated this thing like a gimmick, but Insomniac incorporated it heavily into the gameplay. I couldn't imagine playing this game without it. I mentioned it earlier, but you can feel everything through this controller, from your web wings deploying to the wind rippling past your face as you glide. It's really amazing what they've managed to do with this controller in this game, and even more amazing that my controller doesn't die every 5 seconds. They try to dress it up this time, but these collecting parts are also a knock to the game because they're mindless. It's fun getting around the city with the new wingsuit, so it's not a complete L, but we have to acknowledge that it is mindless. But even still, when people criticize the side content, I'm not sure they played this game. Some of it is mindless, but it's also a lot that's very engaging and competes with the main content. I'm not mad at the balance because it gives us more games to experience, and doing the mindless stuff when you're tired of thinking about the main story is a perfect way to continue to progress the game. I didn't try fast travel because why would I do that? Swinging around the map is literally half the fun. The web wings were an amazing addition. It's something I didn't know I needed until I got it. The wind tunnels are cool points of interest that just make traveling this area so much faster and incredibly fun. There's still nothing like slingshotting yourself across an open area and doing the traditional web zipping though. They managed to make the controls even more tight and precise. I remember in the previous games how I felt like I wasn't fully in control and was just going where the game allowed. I will complain that stopping with the web wings feels awkward, but also I feel like that's a me thing. I want to press triangle to get rid of them and immediately begin to slow momentum. I feel like I'm still gliding and then I miss where I was trying to stylishly land. Again, I feel like that's a me thing since I haven't heard this from anyone else. The most random interactable things, whether they be in missions or in the overworld, also give this game an extra flair. I wasn't recording, but the Mysterio part with Miles, yeah. That solidified this game to me because you didn't have to fit that in, but you did, and there's a bunch more like that in the game. The MJ parts are even good. They added a stun gun and a bit more fast-paced elements to her sections. I get people hate MJ's parts, but they're legitimately better. I get you're playing Spider-Man to play as Spider-Man and not his girlfriend, but Spider-Man has never done this alone, and incorporating her into the series was a unique move. Her stealth is stealthier, and her takedowns are pretty cool. I wouldn't play an entire game as her without significant upgrades, but they're cool when you come across them. Same as the Spider-Bot missions. The first one you do, there's a jump scare with a rat, and it's just perfect. I can't go far in this game without finding something to do. The way I tackled these games in the past is I ran through every section and side mission before going to the next main quest. The game will give you space to check out the city and explore by not giving you the next main quest immediately after finishing the current one, but that's just damn good game design. Encouraging players to get lost in the world even when they want to beeline to the main story is how you create a more memorable experience, even though I'm very confident this game will be remembered for years to come. Spider-Man 2 is more the same, but that's not a bad thing. I don't think they've done too much to create a brand new experience, but the last two games were so good, they didn't really need to. The minor tweaks this game provides to two already amazing experiences is enough to warrant its praises. But it's that continued pursuit of perfection and quality that makes Sony, and specifically Insomniac, who is carrying the PS5 generation on the back by the way, as great as they are. It's that quality assurance that I wish we saw from other studios in the space. There is admittedly a lot of hype around this game, and while much of it is deserved, so are some of the criticisms. It's not a perfect game, and I've ran into issues that seem pretty specific to me, so I didn't mention them here, like my pre-order bonuses deleting themselves from my game. I've also heard of audio issues from a couple friends, and I've also had enemies get stuck behind walls and me not be able to finish fights until 10 minutes later when the game recognizes what's happening. Regardless, I can't recommend this game enough, and honestly, I'd say this is worth buying a PS5 for over all the other exclusives out there on this console. We know Insomniac has at least one more game in them with Wolverine, and I cannot wait for that. But for now, I'm more than confident that Spider-Man 2 and all its hype can hold us over. For more gaming reviews like this one, check out my review of Armored Core 6 on PS5. That game was almost too difficult to be good. Also be sure to like, comment, subscribe, all the good stuff, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.